podcast for radicals, part of a Guide for Radicals series. I'm your host, Jason Bayless. Thank you for joining us. In our last two episodes, we introduced the cycle of socialization and the cycle of liberation. These frameworks illuminate how systems of oppression influence our lives and how we can collectively break free from them. Within the cycle of liberation, we explored three transformative dimensions. First, there's the intrapersonal dimension. This involves examining how dominant systems like racism, patriarchy, or capitalism have shaped our thoughts, beliefs, and even our identities. It's about recognizing and unlearning the messages we've internalized, allowing us to see the world and ourselves through a new lens. Then we explored the interpersonal dimension. Liberation here becomes a collaborative effort. It's about fostering relationships and cultivating community practices that operate beyond dominant power structures. Through these connections, we learn to work together in ways that align with the principles of justice, equity, and mutual respect. Finally, there's the systemic dimension. This dimension focuses on the broader structures, institutions, policies, and systems that perpetuate oppression. Here, liberation requires reimagining society's fundamental systems, dismantling oppressive frameworks, and building equitable alternatives that serve everyone. These three dimensions, personal, relational, and systemic, are deeply interconnected and offer invaluable insights into how liberation occurs at multiple levels. Today, we'll explore four dimensions of liberation, beginning with personal liberation, then moving through social and systemic liberation, before concluding with spiritual liberation. Each one aligns closely with the expanded framework we'll explore today. Personal liberation mirrors the intrapersonal dimension by focusing on self-reflection and internal transformation. Just as we saw with personal liberation, the work begins with questioning internalized beliefs and fostering change within ourselves. Social liberation builds on the interpersonal dimension by centering collective relationships and community action. Just as personal liberation creates space for individual growth, social liberation amplifies this by connecting those personal transformations to collective efforts for justice. Systemic liberation expands the systemic dimension, emphasizing not just dismantling harmful structures, but also reimagining and constructing equitable alternatives. Building on social liberation, systemic liberation shifts the focus from community-level action to challenging and transforming the broader institutions that uphold oppression. And finally, spiritual liberation adds a new layer, highlighting the ethical and moral grounding that sustains all these efforts. Just as systemic liberation reimagines institutions, spiritual liberation ensures that our values and ethics align with the world we strive to build. By connecting these dimensions, we're not replacing the earlier framework, but broadening it to reflect a more holistic and integrative approach. Today, we'll uncover how these expanded dimensions, personal, social, systemic, and spiritual liberation, intersect and reinforce one another, offering a deeper, more comprehensive path toward transformative change. Let's begin with personal liberation. Now that we've introduced the broader framework, it's time to look inward and reflect on how dominant systems have shaped our beliefs, behaviors, and identities. Take a moment to think about the ways societal expectations might have influenced your sense of self. How often do we stop to question the rules we live by? From an early age, we're socialized into systems like racism, patriarchy, and capitalism. These systems teach us what to value, how to define success, and even how to see ourselves and others. To put it simply, these beliefs act like a pair of tinted glasses, shaping how we see ourselves and the world around us, often distorting reality in ways that uphold systems of oppression. Over time, these internalized ideas can go unnoticed, quietly shaping how we interact with the world. Personal liberation begins when we pause and ask, where did these beliefs come from? Who benefits from me holding on to them? And most importantly, how can I unlearn them? Imagine carrying an old, heavy backpack filled with items you were told you needed but never questioned. Liberation starts when you open it, take a closer look, and begin removing what no longer serves you. In other words, it's about challenging the hidden scripts we've been handed and replacing them with values rooted in equity and justice. This is a process of reflection and education. It involves deeply examining the beliefs we hold, the habits we've formed, and the perspectives we take for granted. For example, participating in anti racism workshops can help uncover biases that influence our interactions and decision making. Practicing mindfulness, which involves paying close attention to our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment, allows us to identify patterns of thought that perpetuate harm, whether to ourselves or others. For instance, noticing when self critical thoughts arise can help us recognize internalized societal pressures and begin to replace them with self compassion. Engaging with communities that challenge us to grow through book clubs, activist networks, or dialogue circles can broaden our understanding and provide tangible steps toward personal transformation. Each of these practices contributes to dismantling the invisible structures within us that mirror the systems we seek to change in the world. But this work isn't just about individual transformation, it's deeply tied to collective liberation. When we do the work to free ourselves from internalized oppression, we show up differently in our communities and movements. We're able to collaborate more effectively, build deeper trust, and inspire those around us to question their own internalized beliefs. For example, consider the ongoing fight for LGBTQ plus rights in places where societal norms are deeply entrenched. These struggles are not only about resisting systemic discrimination, they're also about reclaiming agency and challenging the norms that have silenced and marginalized people for so long. In doing so, they create ripples that empower others to join the fight for justice. Personal liberation isn't a solitary act. It's part of a broader process that connects us to each other and to the systems we seek to change. By working to transform ourselves, we lay the foundation for collective transformation. Liberation, after all, begins within, but it doesn't stop there. Personal liberation reminds us that unlearning oppressive beliefs is about individual growth and creating the capacity to support and inspire collective action. Now that we understand personal liberation, let's move on to social liberation. If personal liberation is about transforming ourselves, social liberation is about how we work together to create change. Let's pause for a moment and think about what social really means. It's about communities, relationships, and collective power. Imagine your local park. By itself, it might just be an empty space. But when communities come together to plant a community vegetable farm, something transformative happens. Not only do they create fresh food and green space, but they also forge relationships, share skills, and demonstrate their collective power to transform their environment. This simple act becomes a microcosm of social liberation, people working together to meet their needs and create positive change. Social liberation is rooted in collective action, people coming together, sharing power, and making decisions as equals. Think of it like a neighborhood potluck. Everyone contributes what they can, everyone has a voice in the planning, and everyone shares in the benefits. This is more than just organizing, it's practicing the equitable and democratic relationships we want to see in the wider world. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, communities formed mutual aid networks to deliver food and medicine to vulnerable community members, showcasing solidarity in times of crisis. Cooperation Jackson in Mississippi demonstrates how worker owned cooperatives can challenge capitalist structures by promoting shared ownership and economic justice. In Oakland, Moms for Housing used direct action to occupy vacant houses, calling attention to the housing crisis and advocating for affordable homes. And movements like Black Lives Matter have shown how collective action can amplify voices, challenge systemic oppression, and create cultural shifts. These examples reveal a key truth. Social liberation happens every day, not just during disasters. Take a moment to think about your own community. What examples of social liberation do you see around you? Are there neighbors organizing for shared resources, local initiatives challenging inequality, or groups creating spaces for collective decision making? Whether it's through mutual aid, cooperative movements, or grassroots organizing, people working together can achieve what no individual could do alone. To put it simply, social liberation is about building power through connection, cooperation, and solidarity. These everyday acts of solidarity and mutual support show us that social liberation is not a distant ideal, but a tangible process that unfolds in our communities. Remember that powerful quote, "None of us are free until all of us are free." Social liberation embodies this principle. It's about recognizing that our struggles are interconnected and that we're stronger when we unite across movements and causes. By working together, communities can challenge entrenched systems of oppression and create alternatives grounded in justice, equality, and care. As we'll see when we explore systemic liberation, these collective actions lay the groundwork for broader institutional change. Now that we've explored the collective power of social liberation, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture: systemic liberation. This dimension takes aim at the structures and institutions that uphold oppression. Simply put, it's about addressing the why behind societal inequities. Have you ever wondered why some neighborhoods lack basic resources while others thrive? Systems like capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy are deeply embedded in how societies function. Systemic liberation challenges us to confront these systems head on and reimagine them entirely. It's like renovating a house that has a crumbling foundation. You can't just repaint the walls. You need to rebuild from the ground up with stronger, more sustainable materials. It requires strategies like direct action to disrupt the status quo, mutual aid networks to meet each other's needs, and prefigurative politics to model the world we want to see. In other words, systemic liberation is about not only resisting the structures that harm us, but also proactively creating alternatives that reflect our shared values. Institutional change can be achieved through sustained advocacy, strategic alliances, and community led initiatives that create alternative governance structures. For example, participatory budgeting initiatives empower communities to decide how public funds are allocated, directly challenging top down economic control. Similarly, policy advocacy campaigns that demand the defunding of harmful institutions, such as policing, redirect resources toward education, healthcare, and community programs that promote equity. Movements for abolition, indigenous sovereignty, and labor organizing are powerful examples of systemic liberation in action. Abolitionist campaigns work to dismantle the prison industrial complex while promoting transformative justice models. Indigenous sovereignty movements assert self determination and sustainable stewardship of land, offering alternatives to extractive colonial systems. Labor unions and worker cooperatives push back against capitalist exploitation by demanding fair wages and workplace democracy. Each of these movements challenges the roots of systemic harm and works toward creating just and sustainable alternatives. Systemic liberation demonstrates that by combining bold strategies with community led initiatives, we can address the structural roots of oppression while building institutions that reflect the values of equity and justice, effectively creating the world we all deserve. Finally, let's conclude our exploration with spiritual liberation. When we talk about spiritual liberation, we're not just talking about religion, we're talking about something more fundamental: the values and beliefs that guide our actions and give our work meaning. Take a moment to reflect. What drives your sense of purpose? What values guide your decisions each day? Think of spiritual liberation as the compass that guides our journey toward justice. Just as a compass helps us navigate unfamiliar terrain, our deepest values help us stay true to our purpose, even when the path gets challenging. This isn't about following a specific faith or doctrine. It's about being intentional about the ethics that underlie everything we do and ensuring that those ethics remain at the forefront of our actions, especially in difficult times. Spiritual liberation shows up in many forms. For example, in Latin America, liberation theology combines religious faith with political activism. Imagine church leaders not just preaching about justice, but actively organizing with communities to challenge poverty and oppression. Their spiritual beliefs become a source of strength in the fight for social change, showing how deeply held values can inspire transformative action. But spiritual liberation isn't limited to religious traditions. Consider indigenous movements for environmental justice. These communities often view their relationship with the land not as ownership, but as a sacred responsibility passed down through generations. This perspective transforms organizing into an act of care and reverence, where justice is inseparable from ethical stewardship of the earth. These movements illustrate how spiritual liberation is rooted in deep connections, whether to community, land, or shared values, and how those connections shape a vision for collective justice. These examples teach us something crucial. Spiritual liberation provides the why behind our work. It's like the roots of a tree. invisible but essential, anchoring us through storms and nourishing our growth. Without strong roots, the tree would fall. Similarly, without a grounding in shared values, movements risk losing direction and purpose when faced with challenges. For instance, during times of setbacks or overwhelming odds, shared values remind us of the bigger picture, keeping us focused on what matters most. Whether it's the fight for environmental justice, labor rights, or dismantling systemic racism, spiritual liberation ensures we stay connected to the deeper motivations that sustain us. Think about your own experience with social justice work. What sustains you when things get difficult? How do your values help you stay committed to the cause? Perhaps it's the belief that every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger movement. Or maybe it's the connections you've formed with others who share your vision. Spiritual liberation reminds us that transformation isn't just about external change. It's about nurturing the deep sense of purpose and connection that makes long term commitment possible. As we'll see when we explore how these dimensions work together, spiritual liberation provides the ethical foundation that helps unite and sustain all our efforts toward collective change. By rooting ourselves in shared ethics, we create a foundation of resilience that allows us to weather the storms of struggle and emerge stronger. In this way, spiritual liberation acts as both a compass and a foundation, helping us navigate the complexities of working toward justice and equity while staying true to the world we envision. It reinforces the idea that liberation is as much about the journey as it is about the destination, ensuring that our path is grounded in integrity, care, and unwavering purpose. As we've explored these dimensions, personal, social, systemic, and spiritual liberation are deeply interconnected. Imagine them as strands in a web, each one essential to creating a complete and resilient picture of liberation. Each dimension strengthens the others, forming a holistic and unified approach to dismantling oppression and building more just systems. By recognizing these connections, we see how efforts in one area can ripple out, reinforcing and amplifying the work in another. As we reflect on these dimensions together, consider how they form a web of interconnected actions, each supporting the others to ensure no piece of the work is left isolated. When we work on ourselves, addressing our internalized beliefs and biases, we build stronger, more trusting communities. For example, imagine someone unlearning internalized prejudices through anti racism workshops and then bringing that awareness into their workplace or local volunteer group. These personal changes ripple outward, fostering environments where people feel respected and heard. These communities, in turn, provide the foundation for larger collective action, where solidarity and shared goals become the driving forces for change, like organizing a neighborhood campaign to address housing inequality or starting a mutual aid network to support those in need. Organizing collectively allows us to create the conditions for systemic transformation, addressing the root causes of oppression. Imagine it as building a bridge over a wide chasm. Collective organizing provides the structural support, the foundation that connects our communities and enables progress, while our values ensure we're building toward the right destination. Each dimension strengthens the others, just as each component of the bridge reinforces the whole structure. At the same time, staying grounded in our values through spiritual liberation acts as the guiding blueprint, ensuring that every plank and beam aligns with our principles. This dual approach ensures that our work is sustainable, ethical, and resilient in the face of challenges, combining practicality with purpose to drive meaningful transformation. This interdependence means that neglecting any one dimension can weaken the overall movement. For example, focusing solely on systemic change without addressing personal growth might reproduce harmful power dynamics. Similarly, prioritizing individual transformation without connecting to collective struggles risks isolating liberation efforts. The strength of these dimensions lies in their ability to reinforce one another, ensuring that the work is transformative at every level. So, as we close, take a moment to reflect. Which dimension resonates most with you right now? Is it the personal work of unlearning internalized oppression? Is it the collective organizing that builds community power? Perhaps it's the systemic efforts to dismantle harmful institutions, or the spiritual grounding that keeps you connected to your values and purpose. For example, think about a recent moment where you questioned a norm, participated in a community effort, or acted in alignment with your deepest values? How did it feel, and what did you learn? What might it look like to explore and deepen your engagement with the others in your work or community? Liberation is not a fixed endpoint, but an ever evolving journey shaped by our collective and individual efforts. It grows and transforms as we deepen our understanding, build connections, and adapt to the challenges and opportunities before us. Together, through our shared commitment to personal growth, community building, systemic change, and ethical grounding, we can create a world rooted in justice, equity, and care. Each step we take reinforces the interconnected web of liberation, reminding us that transformation happens at every level. Thank you for joining me today. This episode is part of a Guide for Radical series, where we explore the frameworks and strategies necessary for transformative change. If you enjoyed this conversation, I invite you to explore other episodes and dive deeper into these topics by visiting radicalguide.com. There you can explore a guide for radicals in more depth and connect with additional resources to support your journey. If you appreciate our work, consider making a tax-deductible donation to help sustain and expand our efforts. Your support enables us to continue amplifying voices for justice, collective liberation, and systemic change. Thank you for being here and for committing to this work. Together, we create new ways of being, relating, and organizing as we build toward collective liberation. Until then, keep working together, resisting, and remember. Follow ideas, not people.